Welcome to a special edition of the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. Join the conversation on social media with the hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to a special edition of the ODPH. I'm your host, Ken M., and in studio with me is one of the most highly anticipated musical acts in the 607. On February 9th, they're going to be playing Subterranea with Shout at the Robots, who you heard on the previous episode of the Spotlight Edition. They're going to be also playing with The Challenged, Unethical, Amber Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in ODPH history, and dare I say the Binghamton music scene, in studio, Tom Dowd, Nick Donatelli, the Hand of the King himself, Billy Gaz, and Jimmy Gazik, better known as Floodlands. Gentlemen, thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for having us.
Hey,
Thanks,
you.
Ken. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming on.
Good to be anywhere, though.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I said, this is one of the groups that we've been most highly requested to bring on the show and find out all the information they can. So, hey, we're trying to please the public here. So let's hashtag it up. Hashtag Floodlands. Let's do it that way. So let me go around the room here. How did you guys get into music growing up? Where are you from? Let's start with Tom.
All right. So obviously I'm from here in Binghamton, and I got into music because I got expelled in 8th grade. And what happened is my parents had a guitar lying around. And I figure I might as well make something of myself. So I figure I would fit around with the guitar for a little bit. And I got into Nirvana and the Deftones and Tool. And that's, I guess, where it all started.
Very interesting. I mean, obviously turning a negative into a positive.
That's kind of what I do.
All right. That's fair enough. Yep. Billy?
So I'm from Endicott, New York, Jimmy's brother. Between the two of us, we both got into music probably from our parents. I think our first concert was, we went to Van Halen and Bad Company, right?
Yep, that's it.
That was the first one I ever went to. Besides that, I think I was into more like black metal in middle school, and then as I got into high school, I kind of branched out into punk, which is probably reverse for most people, but that's just kind of how it worked out. I don't know.
Fair enough. Nick, how about you?
I also grew up in Endicott and grew up in one of those households where there was music going all the time, kind of that stereotypical story. My dad was actually really into blues, and so I kind of started out getting into blues and jazz and reggae and all kinds of, like, not exactly like heavy rock type stuff, but that's what prompted me to pick up guitar, was essentially blues music. And I grew up in what I typically refer to as a riff-based household.
Okay.
As opposed to, and it's like this weird theory I have that people either grow up in like one of two types of musical households. It's really melody-driven and songwriting-driven, like you grew up listening to the Beatles and, I don't know, Simon and Garfunkel or whatever. Or like my house, I grew up listening to Black Sabbath and blues and Buddy Guy and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. So anyhow, that's where it started, and I've been playing stuff ever since I was like maybe 12 years old, I think.
Oh wow, okay, so a long tenure there. Jimmy?
I'm pretty much opposite of Nick in that aspect. My dad's a big Beach Boys fan, so
see
that
the theory holds.
The theory holds
the
up.
Beach Boys, the Beatles, Black Sabbath. Actually, one of them too. Ozzy Osbourne solo. But later on in life, I got more into like stuff like Nirvana, like Tom. Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, I was really into when I was really young. Tool's another one actually too. And even some country stuff like Johnny Cash, June Carter Cash, Willie Nelson. And then later on, like, I got really into metal, like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Me and my cousin Dave actually got into metal together around the same time. And that's when I met Tom, actually, for the first time through Dave. So I've actually been friends with Tom now for like 20 years.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
It's a long time.
That's probably a love story.
Probably even longer, actually. I think I met you before.
I was going to say, it was definitely longer than 20 years.
So,
this is love, Jim.
Yeah. We had
more than 20 years.
Tom and I had this mutual friend who wanted to start a band. And that was the first time we ever played together. It had to have been like probably 1997, 98. It's hard to remember, but...
Yeah, it's going a long way back.
Yeah.
I don't remember either.
Really?
Yeah, so
But
You remember
also,
everything.
like, I don't mean to keep going, but one
No, go
more
right ahead.
thing. Like,
but I'm going to anyway.
I'm going to anyway.
Just one more thing.
Band merits
me
right
and
there.
me and Bill are kind of the same way though. Like, we're in the metal, but then I heard the Misfits, and then like all hell broke loose, punk rock all the way. But
It's so interesting that you guys came from like a metal background first, and then went more into punk. Like,
Yeah.
you don't usually hear that. It's more like an evolution of like going from punk into metal. Like I spent my kind of formative years in my teens and then in college, like really mostly being into like hardcore. I used to live in Syracuse, and I'm sure we'll get to that.
big hardcore.
Yeah,
So
that
you
explains
know-
a lot.
Yeah.
But actually, it's funny you mention that because I was actually a punk first before I got into metal. I was definitely into like the Pixies and like early '90s indie scene. Like a lot of those bands, like Mudhoney and
Good
like
stuff.
the Melvins and stuff like that. So those ideals really formed me when I was a teenager. I always had punk ideals. I couldn't relate to a lot of the cheesy metal going on, in the late '90s and new metal, things like that. So, I mean, I was definitely a punk before I was into metal, and what got me into metal is just seeing underground bands doing it without talking about things I couldn't relate to. So,
Like wolves,
yeah, like Wolves and
Draculas.
and just things that new metal bands tend to talk about that I can't really talk about on air. I can relate to that. So
No, I mean, that's just kind of really interesting, especially like for how long, obviously Billy and Jimmy have known each other their entire lives.
A couple of years.
Well, yeah, but just, factoring with Tom growing up with them and just kind of how y'all gravitated towards each other and just with the same passion of music. I mean, that's something, too, that, you can really hear when you guys are playing, and we'll get to that a little later in the show. And then going into that, I mean, Tom, you obviously said you got your first guitar, right after, you had your bad experience with school there.
it wasn't a bad experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of showed you, the direction you wanted to go to, I guess,
Yeah.
negative into a positive.
Well, what it is that I just had the time to do it, and I was never like the kind of kid that was obsessed with music when I was younger. In fact, I really didn't like anything my parents listened to. I would watch MTV and I'd see all these hair metal bands, and even when I was like 7 years old, things like that, I thought it was like really cheesy and I wasn't into it. And what I found out later on is my dad didn't really play all the good heavy albums until I got older. But
What did your dad listen to?
my dad listens to like Black Sabbath and Led
Oh,
Zeppelin.
okay.
He knows what's up. In fact, he actually bought the first 2 albums I listened to. So
See, Riff Household.
Riff Household, exactly. No Beach Boys in my household though.
I know.
Sorry, boys.
The Beatles were banned in my house.
Yeah,
my
same
father
here.
hated them.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah. It's
Well,
hard
that's
to
why
believe,
we're in a
right?
band.
I know.
Oh man.
Yeah, right there. See, that's what it is. I mean, I would not form a band with any of you guys if there was any Beatles in the household. I'm just saying. I mean, once I heard that,
I guess
some
I'm
Beatles in your
getting
household,
kicked out.
Yep. See you, Jim. It's over. No, I'm just.
So, former member of Floodlands, Jimmy
former-
Gassett.
yes. You heard it here first, folks.
Why don't you guys kick Jimmy out? He liked the Beatles.
That's it.
Yeah.
Beatles.
Nah.
But that's just kind of crazy too. I mean, just you figure from where you started, and obviously, your first guitar, you're kind of going into it, and obviously, you're definitely not into what is popular at the time. You're just finding your own way. What was the first guitar you got?
First guitar I got was Sears Harmony, I think, and
Oh damn.
yeah, oh yeah, old school. And the thing basically played like a box of slivers, where I mean, it was just like the worst guitar you could possibly play as far as action is concerned. But you know what? When you were that young and you wanted to learn how to play, it meant the world to you. And I knew that I wanted to do something unique, and because of what happened to me, it was hard for me to relate to my peers at that time. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just became an introvert and just decided to see what I could do with the guitar, and I guess I never really stopped.
No, that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, how about you?
I actually started out playing piano.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of forced into playing piano. My mom was insistent, as I guess part of a program of like youthful well-roundedness. It was you need to play sports and do some kind of music. So I played piano first, and then I played alto sax, and then transitioned to tenor sax, and then transitioned to baritone sax, and found that I really liked like low tuned instruments. And that's part of the reason why like we've been kind of pushing in this band to tune lower and lower. It's mostly just an aesthetic preference for me, but
Me too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as guitar is concerned, I picked that up in probably, like I said, like around the time I was 12 or so. And it was the same kind of deal as Tom. It was like I got a guitar, and I just decided that the best thing for me to do during my years of puberty would be to throw away my social life and learn how to play guitar.
That's really the key to it, too.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
I mean, basically, you have to be an introvert. You have to have no social life in high
Right.
school to be good at your instrument.
Right.
That's the moral of the story here. Not
Well,
really,
I mean,
but-
they always say practice makes perfect, so you want to put as much time into your craft as you
Yeah,
can.
and I think initially too, it's such a frustrating instrument at first until it clicks, and like invariably, like no one is spending the kind of money on a quality instrument that is set up properly that would let you that would ease that transition into learning how to play. You always get like this thing where the string action is like a mile off the fretboard, and you are struggling to get the mechanics of it down and learn the muscle memory, and then suddenly one day it clicks, and you get a feel for how to start playing. And then that kind of happened for me around like 13 or 14. And as I said, I was really initially into the blues a lot. And I, around that time, started kind of listening to, I guess, what was still somewhat underground at the time. Like I got into Jane's Addiction. I like the earlier Soundgarden stuff. And like Super Unknown was like really big at the time. And like Kim Thale and Chris Cornell's kind of guitar style really sort of stuck with me. Like Sonic Youth, I really love. My Bloody Valentine, bands that are like doing guitar stuff but weird guitar stuff. So
Right.
that sort of influence has kind of worked its way into my playing and has been leading to me trying to find a sound that I'm still in pursuit of, but feel like I'm getting closer to. And certainly with these guys, it's it's been more fully realized than ever. So it's exciting. But I went way off on a tangent there. So
That's
No,
okay.
no,
But I
this-
agree with you because I feel like that's a big thing about those early 90s bands where, you had an aesthetic where they were doing things that were experimental and different. I mean, Sonic Youth played in so many different kinds of tunings.
yeah, the
and,
tuning thing is
yeah,
huge. That's
it's
a huge
unbelievable.
part of like what I'm interested in is like different chord voicings and just different textures that you can get with different pedals and different tunings and
Because
all that kind
especially
of
like
stuff.
in the 90s time period when that was really coming out, and that was really starting to take hold. There was a lot more of experimentation with guitars,
Yes.
and then you'd seen it in a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, before that, like in the 90s, or not even really the 90s, but like late 80s, it was like an unfortunate outgrowth of like 70s butt rock that you have like
Yeah,
you have
That's
like
an
you have
interesting
like
way to put it,
you have
yeah.
like glam metal and all that kind of stuff. But I also really think that the 80s kind of get a bad shake when it comes to guitar music. Like there are tons of bands that were doing cool stuff in the underground. Like I've been really influenced by bands like The Cure and Susie and the Banshees, and like stuff that is not exactly right out at the it's not like the most super popular stuff at least it wasn't at the time, but it has influenced kind of where my head has been at as far as writing is concerned.
Right.
But I think a lot of that too has to do with going back to the tuning aspect. I think that it really helps to forge an original sound if you're using experimental tunings, because I feel like there's so many notes you can play on a guitar and standard tunings and tunings that every other band's playing that at some point you're going to run out of ideas and everything starts, to basically implode on itself as far as, notes sounding the same and sound sounding the same and things like that. So I feel like a big way of being able to push music forward is experimenting with new tunings and things like that, because then you can form different types of chord voicings and do different things with the guitar as far as being able to have different octaves and things like that I think really helps to push new ideas forward.
Yeah,
and that's
I mean,
a big thing that we're about.
It's much easier to like work with or explore ideas around like dissonance and using unison as a textural quality. Like
Yes.
when you use different tunings, and we only really use like right now two.
Yeah, we need to fix that.
We need more guitars,
So
but
who writes the songs in this band anyway?
are we getting to that?
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but I think Jimmy.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I
Tom
think-
and I have been talking for a while.
No worries. I think Jimmy wanted to jump in about it.
Yeah, just tell us shut up, Ken. It's cool. Just
No,
tell us shut up.
no, you guys got great content. I'm not going to stop that.
All right.
But I was going
This
to
is
say,
premium internet content.
Yes.
Visit our Patreon page.
Yes. All right, Jim, go for it.
So the first instrument I started with was guitar. I think it was around 7th grade, middle school. When you're in a music class, you get to pick an instrument. So I picked the guitar, but I never really got that good at it. So I started listening to Typo Negative because of my neighbor. He got me into them, and my neighbor Chris Strong, a good friend of mine growing up. But I really liked the sound of Peter Steele's bass playing, and I got a bass for Christmas one year in 2006, or I think I was 16 years old. I got a bass that was called a Jammer. I think it was a Sam's Club special, like Bill's drums, and the neck and everything is cracking these days, but it started cracking probably within a year.
Well, I mean, just from the wear and tear of playing it and that such.
Yeah, not the best quality, but something to start out with, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And then a few years after that, I got a Squire bass that my friends bought me for my birthday, and I still have that one too. That one's still in pretty good shape, actually. It's in Bill's room.
Oh, absolutely. Billy, how about you?
So my first drum set was probably as nice as Jimmy's bass. I think my parents, they got it from Sam's Club, right?
Yeah,
It was
Sam's Club special.
They got everything there.
It was a Mark II, which I've never heard of. I don't know where that came from, but it broke constantly. So I basically built a new drum set out of that, because every time something broke, I bought something like name brand to replace it. After that, I ended up selling it to one of my friends, and I got the one I have now, which I bought off another friend for $300 in high school. But
Wow, and that thing's held up how many years now?
probably 10. I've had it a long time. We just put new heads on it yesterday.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
That was,
A fun 4 hours.
I haven't asked you about that yet, Nick.
They
I'm really
sound
glad
good.
I missed that.
Yeah, they sound great.
They
actually.
sound great, but we're not very good at tuning.
No.
We found out.
Yeah.
But it's tuned now, so we're good.
It was a comedy of errors.
It was. Yes, but it was fun. Good learning experience.
Oh, definitely sounds it. So, I mean, we're going to take a quick break right now because we're going to be talking about some instruments, but why don't we get into some music? We're going to play something brand new from Floodlands. Now, this is off your Bandcamp page,
Yep.
and it's called Ultraviolet.
Yep.
So, why don't we get into that? You're listening to Floodlands on the ODPH. That's Ultraviolet by Floodlands on the ODPH. We got Tom, Nick, Billy, and Jimmy in studio. So last segment we were talking about how their history of growing up, what got them into music, but now let's start talking about them in bands growing up. So Tom, why don't you start us off?
All right, so I'm sure nobody wants to sit and listen to all the bands I've been in over the past 10 to 15 years. I'll just say that I played in a lot of extreme metal bands because I was really into a lot of like the relapse bands back in the mid 2000s. So I was in bands like Cancer Face. I was in Sepsis. I played bass for Sepsis. These Machines, Revoked, Dirty Slits, Cast, and obviously Crimson Brethren as well. So I've been doing this a while, and you know. It's only been recently that I've been branching out a little bit more, so it's been a lot of fun to play with new ideas and things in regards to, you know, branching out of the whole extreme metal, blast beat, double bass all the time kind of metal formula. So that's basically what I've been
Bros too.
Oh, the Bro Bros, yes. But it's weird to talk about a cover band because it's like you didn't write the songs. So it's like, hey, I cover these songs, and it's all there's to it. So, but yes, I'm into Bro Bros too.
Yeah, if you definitely get the chance to check out locally the Bro Bros, you should definitely check their show out.
They're lots of fun.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we like fun. That's what the Bro Bros are all about.
All right, Nick, how about you?
As I mentioned earlier, I really kind of got into playing in bands seriously when I lived in Syracuse. I went to college up there, and I got into a band that just happened to be a friend of one of my cousins that lives in Syracuse, and played bass in that band, actually. So really all the bands I've been in, other than this one and then one other one I'll tell you about in a second, have been as a bass player.
Okay.
So I played bass in a band that was called Murder of Crows, and we changed our name to War of Attrition toward the end of our time together. That was kind of like a Swedish influenced metal band. It was a lot of fun. We did a couple of EPs, played some good shows, supported a bunch of good bands. And then I had a side project with Danny Johnson and a couple other folks from Syracuse. Danny Johnson used to be the singer in God Below and was in the last season, and there's been a bunch of other bands, Unholy, up in Syracuse. I don't know if you know them or not, but that band was called Devil His Due. Originally was Assassin or something like that, but we had to, again, legal implications, had to change it. I played bass in a band called Wagner, which was really more of just, I hate to say like a hired gun kind of scenario, but I got hooked up with this guy, Dan Wagner, who was like this mad scientist kind of dude. He's got like a kind of Frank Zappa-y vibe without the insane kind of technicality, more grunge inspired almost.
Okay.
So played with him, and then I actually moved out to Chicago when 2010 or so, and I played in a band with a coworker of mine called Flyover State briefly. We only played like one show, and it wasn't something that I was like super into, but it was really the last time I played in a band until I got back here after I'd moved to Texas and spent a couple of years there. I moved back to Binghamton in 2016. That's right? Yeah, 2016, and shortly thereafter started kind of getting together with Jim and working on stuff.
All right. Jim, how about you?
Well, me and Bill used to play together a lot in our basement and garage with some neighborhood friends, but I didn't get into something serious until I met my buddy Eric Solo. We started this band called Dark Seduction with our friend Frank Baglioli. We were around for a few years, kind of like almost like a black metal, melodic black metal kind of deal. And then we only played 2 shows. Stopped doing that. I met I met the guys from the Sterlingtons and Maddie Novak, the lady from the Sterlingtons, and we got together, made some great music together. We were banned for 5 years. Did that, then went on, played with Fish Out for I think about a year, and then moved on to Crimson Brethren. Johnny moved back from college, and him, Bill, and I got together, formed that, and our friend Matt Whiteley came in later, and he ended up moving to Texas after a while though, and Frank Martian came in. Frank's been in a lot of great punk bands over the years in the area, and I know me, Tom, and Bill specifically used to go see his bands all the time when we were kids, so it was kind of really cool to have him in our band, but he ended up moving to Indianapolis, I believe.
Okay.
So then Tom and I had always talked about playing together, we just never the right situation, but I figured this was the right situation, the right time and place, and he was more than happy to do it, and I'm still playing with him today, so there's obviously something there, you know what I mean?
And especially for how long you guys have been friends for.
Yeah,
long
time.
That finally, like, recently you guys got together and started playing.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
We were just out, he was always in a band, I was always in a band. And
we were always in separate bands,
yeah.
too. I mean, you were always doing more punk stuff, and I was doing
absolutely.
crazy, like, grindcore death metal bands. So, I mean, I don't think that we always had different things going on up until recently, so that was a big reason why, which I loved the fact I could just go see you live, and I could just watch you play live, and And that was fun for me. And then being able to meet up with you in Crimson was a big deal because I wanted to join Crimson because I mean this in the most empathetic way possible too. Crimson Brethren was an incredible band, and I don't normally listen to music like that.
Yeah.
But it was the quality of the band, the quality of the songwriting. John's an absolutely incredible songwriter.
John
Absolutely.
Luby.
Yes, sir.
That attracted me to your band, and I would always bug Jim about it. I'm like, hey, if you need another guitar player, I would definitely want to do it. And eventually, this buddy over here came
Totally.
through for me.
And then Billy, how about you? I mean, obviously we know you well versed from Crimson Brethren, but what else you been in?
Jimmy told most of the stuff for me. We did used to play when we were younger in the garage in the basement just to kind of figure out what we were doing more or less. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't really get lessons or anything, so we kind of taught ourselves, both of us.
You and John had a bunch of bands.
Yeah, so then after that, maybe in like 9th grade, me and John Luby, we got together and we started making music with our friend Matt Yeagley. That was the Maroon. That was a while. After that, the Burts was after that. We recorded one CD.
That was with Max Adams.
Yeah, that was with Max Adams. So my friend Matt left, and then me, John, and Max had a band for a while. After that ended, Crimson Brethren started, and that's the first band I actually ever played with Jim in besides us practicing when we were kids, which is kind of strange. It's like,
And how long did Crimson go for?
it's like 5 years.
5 years.
right?
I was
Yeah.
going to say it's been 5 years and definitely built a
I
reputation.
got a 5-year curse, you guys.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
Oh,
So we'll have to date stamp this episode and see where we are in 5 years.
Yes.
5 years from now.
But just going into touch base, I mean, Crimson is now on indefinite hiatus,
Yep.
and then obviously now, how did you guys meet up with Nick?
Nick, I think you were moving back from Austin, I think, right? And
Yeah.
you and I had always talked about playing together too.
Yeah, I mean, I've been generating. God, some of the stuff that we have in our kind of our song backlog is stuff that I've been working on since I was in grad school in like 2005.
Oh wow!
And it just has never found a proper home. But when I was shortly before I moved back, I was between jobs, and I was basically like spending every day by myself in my apartment in Austin and just writing, and kind of looking for potentially the idea of getting together and playing with some people. While I was still there, I was working on stuff with a guy named Chip Alexander, who is the drummer for this San Antonio, I think they're San Antonio or Austin-based thrash metal band called Militia, and they're like old school like 80s thrash metal.
Okay.
But I was playing with him. He and I work together, and I work from home, so like it's rare when I'm within driving distance of anybody. So I would drive down there and play with him and like work on stuff. So I had a whole bunch of stuff. I've known Jim forever, and then I moved back in April of 2016 and was like just kind of spitballing the idea of playing around. And a lot of the stuff that we had in the early days of when we were getting together was just kind of leftover stuff I'd sort of earmarked for someday future solo music release, which didn't really ever happen. So
Right.
that's kind of what at least it led to us getting together and saying, let's just try this out and write some stuff and see what sounds fun.
And then, so obviously now you guys have all come together. I mean, vastly experienced, throughout the years, different sounds you guys have been bringing now together. And now we're going into Floodlands.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Obviously we're toasting to that here in the studio if you hear that popped off.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I drank mine already.
Hey.
Yeah.
We need to fix that. Here's a little
So-
bit for you, Nick.
So that being said, how did you come across the name Floodlands?
Well,
That's Nick, I believe.
yeah,
Yes.
so actually among that batch of songs that I was talking about, I had an instrumental piece that was kind of this like ambient, quiet thing that I'd come up with, and it was sort of it obviously didn't have words, so I didn't really have any kind of like larger thematic vision for it, but it sort of was evocative to me of coming home.
Okay.
And I'd lived this place where I'd lived far away from home for a long time, not really close to family, not really a ton of friends where I'd been, just because the nature of my job kept me from socializing a lot, because I would either be traveling or in my house. So anyway, I wrote this piece, and it was kind of like just had an evocative quality to me of this idea of returning home and a certain amount of, it's hard to explain, I guess, like when I left Binghamton with this kind of like exuberant sort of like, yes, I'm finally getting out of here. I'm going to go finally fulfill this vision of myself or whoever I'm going to be. And then as I went out and did this stuff, I sort of realized like, well, no, that change all has to come within. It's not going to be just being in a different place or being far from home, or if only I were in a better city. then I would be happy or fulfilled or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
coming to that kind of grips with that was sort of like this idea of reckoning with the past and having almost a sense of like, not exactly sadness, but kind of like a bittersweetness to it. And then coming home and having a hopeful quality about it. Like that was sort of something that I tried to like weave into this song. And I just kind of came up with the name Floodlands for it as I guess in a way, kind of almost like an homage to being back home after this sort of long journey away. I don't know that actually answers your question.
No,
it makes sense to me though.
One thing I want to add to that, though, is that when we were trying to form the band name, is that we knew that we didn't want to do something that was very typical of our genre and what we're trying to do as musicians. And I'm kind of bored with the idea of being very literal. I'm kind of bored with the idea that you have to talk about something specific and it has to mean the same thing to everybody else. And I know personally, I've been obsessed. I've read atlases since I've been 5 years old. I've watched the Weather Channel since I've been 5 years old. And I just think that there's nothing more powerful than weather and nature. And I think that it really applies to our band because we want to write about things that are powerful, and there's nothing more powerful than Mother Nature and volcanoes and earthquakes and hurricanes and things like that. There's no man that can stop any of that, and I think that Floodlands is a really good representative as far as the thematic ideas that we're trying to present as a band, to be able to not only do something that's powerful but also do something that's very metaphorical. You can relate to it in any way. It can mean anything you want when you listen to it. And I like that open-ended idea form of art where people can interpret it any way they want to. So I wanted to make sure we had a band name that actually could encompass that.
No, that's a very interesting perspective on that, Tom. Mm-hmm. So obviously the sound of Crimson Brethren is pop punk. Let me ask everybody in the room, how would you describe the sound of Floodlands?
Tom should do that.
Okay, so this is what Floodlands sounds like. You're waking up on a sunny morning in Binghamton, New York, and you walk outside. It's 60 degrees out in the morning. There's a warm breeze on your skin as you go to work, and you look to your west, and you see a bunch of clouds on the horizon, some dark clouds that are giving you a foreboding kind of feeling when you look to the west. And literally 10 minutes later, you're in the middle of a storm. There's a bunch of lightning, there's a bunch of wind, and it's very chaotic and it's very intense. And I feel like that's the best way to describe our sound.
Nick? It's tough to come after that. That was very descriptive.
I don't know. Like, I mean, one of the sort of guiding principles of the band when we first started it was the idea of creating music that solely satisfied our own musical interests and not being beholden to external expectations of like, oh, well, we have to be a heavy band. Do we have enough blast beats? Do we have enough breakdowns? Like, I was not interested in doing anything like that. So, I mean, we have some music or some songs that sound like, to me, have like a sort of Smashing Pumpkins vibe. Other stuff that's just like straight up doom metal. Like we have, and you might hear it when you listen to the song we're going to play later, like guitar harmonies that are like reminiscent of Morbid Angel. I mean, like we have a kind of really like our whole lives history worth of musical influence that we're kind of weaving into a sound that, to me, it's just easier to say we just play heavy rock music.
Okay.
Like to broaden it more than that, or like get more specific than that, to me
It's
is like
it's like the easiest way to tell someone. I'd say.
Yeah, because I mean, I think you can get into like the genre hair splitting thing, and like when I think about the future plans of this band, like what I envision or what I want to do is be able to do things like maybe we have an entire album full of acoustic folk songs. Maybe we have an entire album of covers. Maybe we do albums where we tune down to like G standard or something absurd, like, you know, like, but not painting ourselves into a corner where we say, well, you know, everybody expects us to be a heavy metal band.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think probably when you think about the genre that we most naturally fit into, metal would probably be the most accurate descriptor, but I don't like the idea of limiting it based on any kind of external framework.
Agreed.
Fair enough.
Okay, well, that's the thing about art, though, is that art shouldn't be defined by anybody else but yourselves or who you're working with. And I feel like I'm really bored with the idea that art should be something that's defined by anybody else. Like, nobody should tell you what to do. Nobody should tell you that you should be doing something else, and then it's not your own anymore. And I think the beauty of creation, as far as, artistic pursuits are concerned, is that you can do whatever you want, and you shouldn't be limited to any genre boundaries. And I think genre boundaries are for people who, honestly, this might be a little controversial, but I think it's one of those things that people can hold on to it as a crutch, as a reason not to grow, as a reason not to do something. And I feel like if you're an artist and you want to create the best kind of art and best kind of medium that you can, you should embrace every idea that comes to you that's worthy of the vision you're trying to present.
Yeah, and I would add, too, that that's kind of another guiding principle we've had where we try to tease out any kind of idea that we have all the way to some sense of fulfillment before we get to a point where we say, oh, no, that's not going to work for us. I know that I've been in, and I think to your point, Tom, like a lot of younger bands, and I don't mean this as a slight or anything,
Right.
but like a lot of younger bands are seeking some kind of external yardstick for measuring how well they're doing as a band.
Right.
And the easiest way to do that is through comparison to other people in your genre that you look up to or that you
Yes.
like and you want to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an older guy now, and I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I care about maximizing the amount of time I get to play music and doing stuff that I like and enjoy, and that may upset people or frustrate people if they're like, well, why don't they do more of this, or why doesn't this isn't what metal is supposed to sound like or what rock's supposed to sound like. I don't really care.
Well, no, because what you want to do is you want to go create your own vision of your own art. I mean, that's
Right.
what it boils down to it in its essence.
We're very selfish in our pursuit when it comes to that. I mean, we do not do it for external validation. I've never created music for external validation. I've never cared about what somebody thinks my song should sound like, because to me, if they can make my song better, then they should do it better. I'm doing it my own way because I feel like that's the best presentation I can give them as far as what I'm trying to do. And if they think they can do better, then you know what, they should do better. And that's not a negative thing, but at the same time, I think that you should always be honest with yourself as far as your pursuit.
Yeah, and adding it to that, I mean, I have been in projects before where the intent was more commercial,
Mm-hmm.
and which is not to say that there wasn't still an underlying commitment to creating art, but the commitment was one that was trying to be reconciled with either a commercial motive or a desire to be maybe not profitable in a monetary sense, but profitable in a, like, we want to get more people actively interested in this project, or sell more shirts, or sell T-shirt, or sell CDs, or whatever. And one of the things that I think we've tried to do with this is control as much of the means of production for our music as possible. So then that's why we're self-recording and why it's taken so long. So I apologize.
Yeah, no, like I was telling you before you came in, it's like I get hit up more times than I care to go on record to say, when people, because obviously they hear the podcast and they always hear Crimson Brethren playing,
Right,
so
right.
everybody thinks I have an inside to, like, when Floodlands is coming, I'm like, the minute I get something, I'm going to put it on the show, so nobody, you'll know as soon as I do.
It's coming, I promise. But to my point was that we I think exist within a framework of DIY, but doing DIY with a level of quality that we feel comfortable releasing it out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, that makes great sense. Jimmy, you got anything you want to add to that?
I don't know. This does go with it too, but the thing I like about playing with these guys too, and it's been a challenge, but we challenge each other every time we play together. Like, it's constructive, and I've been challenged more in this band than any other band I've ever been in, and I've seen myself grow as a bass player, and I've seen my brother grow as a drummer, and these guys, they're amazing. They're amazing guitar players. Like, I feel very honored to be a part of it. And thanks to the three of you. Like,
You're too kind.
Yes.
You're really.
Too kind, yes.
yeah, but like, you guys are giving me something that I didn't have before, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Billy, you kind of feeling the same vibe too?
Yeah, everything they said, pretty much. But as far as, like, learning and growing, this is the band that's definitely pushed me the most and made me improve the most. And made me tune my drums, which is probably a good thing, honestly.
How was it back?
Being in a punk band, that's not the most important thing, but being in this band, like, it's just put me at a different level. I also feel like honored to play with these guys because all of them are older than me, so they have more experience playing, and they've been in bands longer than me. So I've learned a lot from all of them. It's been fun.
Well, you can just see like the musical backgrounds everybody's bringing to the table here, and especially from making such a departure from what you're used to. Because I mean, you played in a lot of punk bands.
Yeah.
And now to bring it into a group that is very hard to define, and not meaning that as a slight by any means.
It's
but-
a compliment.
Yeah, I'd prefer that.
But that's true because
Yeah.
it's one of the more eclectic mixes of sounds that you're going to find because you can't really narrow it down to a genre. It's going to be what it's going to be, however you interpret it as.
Right.
And for this has got to be such a great departure that when you're implementing this to your songwriting, I mean, is the process different? Would you say, or how does that go about? And it's open to anybody.
I can't speak to what everybody was doing in Crimson, but I mean, I love songwriting, and I find it to be really fun. It's also very challenging. And like speaking to what these guys were talking about, challenging yourself as a musician, one of the things that I want to do with this band that I've seen so many other bands in the heavier genres do is like avoid riff salad. If I don't know if that phrase makes any sense.
No, you want to clarify
yeah,
that?
like what I mean by riff salad is they just take like 20 different cool sounding riffs and sling them together.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that. I want to write songs. Like I want to write good, memorable songs. And so, there's a certain sort of standard that I have for the kind of stuff I want to bring into the rehearsal space, and it tends to be things where, and I do record stuff at home, but like stuff that once I've recorded it for posterity's sake, I will still have it in my head after I've left. And that's, I mean, so from a songwriting perspective, that's the kind of level of quality that I want to bring to the band, and bring to whoever decides that they want to listen to us.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to say about that too is that when it comes to writing riffs for this band, one of the new things I've been doing is I'm not recording my riffs anymore because I feel like if I can't remember the riff, then it's not worth remembering. And one thing I want to say about songwriting as well is that I'm really bored with the idea that you as Nick said, riff salad. I feel like a lot of bands do that, and to me, I want to write songs that stand the test of time, something I want to listen to on my own. And it's just a completely complex. It's the most complex art of being in a band. It's the most complex art of being a musician. Is writing a song that people can remember. And I think of a lot of bands that people might be surprised by this, but I think of death metal bands, for example, like Nile, Suffocation, and bands like Today Is the Day and High on Fire, and things like that. They're all pop bands. And what I mean by that is that there's something about the song, something about the riffs, something about the vocals that you remember. And I don't feel like being a pop band is a bad thing. And when I say I want to write pop songs, I want to write extreme metal pop songs. And with this group of guys right here, I feel like we're doing that. And I think that having memorable songwriting is the most important aspect of being in a band or a musician in general. If you don't have that, you don't have anything.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I keep cutting everybody off. I'll
No, by no means.
Nick, I'm really offended.
I know.
I'm crying over here.
I'll add that. I mean, from like the nuts and bolts songwriting perspective, which may be what the kernel of your question was.
Yeah.
I think we all have. I mean, aside from Billy, and I don't mean that as a diss on Billy, but he doesn't. We kind of in equal measure, I think, bring stuff into the band room, and the idea is that we're gonna, as I said earlier, we're gonna try to tease these ideas out and make them fulfill them essentially. And I mean, we already have between Jim's stuff, my stuff, Tom's stuff, and the stuff that we've kind of put together, just jamming in the band room. We probably have like another. What would you say, like 15, 20 songs, probably?
Probably at least
maybe
15.
That's a bit aggressive, but
that's probably accurate.
It's pretty
yeah.
accurate.
I mean, like we've got
there's so much material,
a large backlog of songs that we I think are at a point where once we get this EP done, we could immediately go and start polishing those up and start recording another batch and have that ready for you in another year.
Yeah, in another year.
Yeah,
that'll be very impressive to do. Jimmy, you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
He's a man of simple words.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
no, they said everything I wanted to say, basically.
No.
Billy's saying the same thing too, because I think everybody is getting anxious because Tom wants to introduce speaking of songs, I'm going to just pass the mic to him and let him go from there.
Okay, so this will be the premiere of our song called Martyrs of Shame. It's the first song off of our EP that we're about to put out that anybody's heard in a public forum. So this is Floodlands, Martyrs of Shame, and it's a banger. Enjoy.
New Floodlands on the ODPH, and we still have Tom, Nick, Billy, and Jimmy in studio. They have a big show coming up February 9th at Subterranea. So, guys, let me ask you this. What is your thoughts on the current musical scene here?
Basically, my thoughts on the whole musical scene is that I don't like to encompass just a local scene as far as how I feel about music in general. I feel like that punk rock and do-it-yourself ethics have actually gone global at this point, and I think that in a lot of ways, I think it's amazing that anybody can make a record in their own bedroom if they want to. Anybody can put a record online if they want to, and I feel like it's been the healthiest it's ever been for that reason. I think people that are afraid of that are people that are doing it for the wrong reasons, and there's no better time to be a musician than now, because you can literally make a record in your bedroom, do whatever you want, put it online, promote it any way you want to, and you would have an audience for it. And I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing.
Nick?
Second that. I mean, we are in the process of doing that. You just heard a track that we did exclusively in Tom's and my houses. So it's certainly possible to get great quality sounding stuff. To get great quality sounding stuff. As far as the local scene, I mean, I've been kind of absent from it for a long time. I didn't really spend a lot of time here going to shows when I was younger. I really spent most of my time in Syracuse, so I don't really know a lot about the Binghamton scene as a participant. I'm excited to play for the people here. I know a lot of people in the scene, and everybody here is really great and been really supportive. I'm thinking about like guys like Mike Micha, Kevin Kober has been really supportive. And I think that it's the type of place that there's something for everyone. Mm-hmm. It certainly seems that way to me. The folks over at Avenue DIY are having all kinds of shows there, which is really wonderful that there are spaces for people to play. And that's one of the things that is tough about Binghamton, I think, at times, is that unlike some of the other cities in the area, we don't really have a rock club that is interested in having bands that come in and do their own thing and aren't there trying to sell people beer necessarily. So it's a good place to be. There seems to be a lot of energy and excitement in the area in general, particularly around downtown. We were just talking off air about all of the stuff happening in downtown. The hope is that there's going to be more and more opportunity for bands to get out and play before bigger audiences. But also, I mean, I'm 37 and I don't go to shows as much as I used to, which is to say I really don't ever go to shows anymore, and I feel kind of bad admitting that on air. But
no, it's the truth. It's a truthful statement.
It's the truth. I'm older. I got a bad back. So I'm probably not the most qualified to speak about what's going on in Binghamton as far as the music scene is concerned. So I'll kick it over to Jimmy and the other guys.
Fair enough. And let me spin this to Jimmy, too.
Sure.
Because, Jimmy, you are definitely one of the more notable representatives of the local scene. How important is it now that you're coming with the new band on the show on February 9th to really make that first impression? I mean, your thoughts on the scene and just what you want to add to it now.
I just want to bring something different to the scene, Hopefully everyone likes it. We've worked really hard on it for over a year now, since October 2017, I believe.
Yes,
so
October 7th.
It's been a while.
So yeah, I don't know. We put a lot of time and effort, and I know Nick and Tom have been working really hard recording everything, tracking drums, and for Bill. So I don't know. We spent a lot of time on this, and we want it to be quality, and we want to give people quality when we play,
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's not doubting me, but especially since you've been such a focal point in the scene, I mean, definitely, how would you describe it to our listeners if they're not familiar?
The scene, I've met some of my best friends in the scene, so it's been great for me. Kevin Kober is one of them. Him and I are still really good friends after all these years. Kevin, Phil Fada from the Underground Theater. Phil doesn't go to many shows anymore, but him and I are still really good friends.
I love Phil.
Yeah,
I know Phil.
he's awesome.
Yeah. What's up, Phil?
Yeah, Jason McCulloch, another friend.
I know Jason.
I know.
He's in the Bros,
yes,
folks.
he is. I don't
He's
know.
a good guy.
Mike Micha is another one. There's so many friendships I've made over the years, and everyone's still pretty involved for the most part. And Maddie Novak, her and I've been friends for years now. And there's definitely a big quality of the scene. They're great people there, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm with Nick in a way because I don't make as many shows anymore because of my schedule. I have a tough work schedule these days.
Yeah.
So, and I don't set up shows. I used to set up shows all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I did it for a few years, and there's a lot of fun, but a lot of work. And like with this schedule, I can't do it as much. I can't attend as much, but I miss it, and I plan on doing more of it now. Even like I think it's a little easier when you're in a band because, you're going to be playing more. So.
Yeah, you're more involved
Yeah,
in it.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's how I feel about it.
And something I want to say about that too is that Binghamton's always been very passionate. No matter what scene you're in, no matter if you're in a hardcore scene, if you're in a punk scene, you're in a metal scene, doesn't matter what it is. Binghamton's always been very passionate in its pursuit because, there's not a lot that has been given to the musicians here and a lot that's been given to these bands that work hard here. And there's a lot of good people involved. And I want to make that very clear. And I think that means a lot when people here, as far as their bands are concerned and their art is concerned, they're not given a lot, but they still pursue it because that's what they love to do. And I feel like that's the most authentic form of art you can possibly be.
Couldn't agree more with you.
Mm-hmm. So I want to give a big shout out to Binghamton, to everybody I've been involved with that. And I have a lot of respect for all of you out there.
That's awesome to hear. Mm-hmm. And especially now we're going into February 9th, Floodlands is going to be headlining with the Challenge on Ethical. Shout out to Robots and Amber Martin. That's the start of your 2019 year. If we go fast forward the clock to December 2019, where is Floodlands going to be?
That's a very good question. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're still going to do what we do. That's what we do.
I still would love to be doing this, so
Well,
absolutely.
The EP will be done.
Yeah.
The EP will be done.
Yes.
It better be.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
If it's not done, I'm done by then. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I if I were to put my, get the crystal ball out, I would think that probably we'll do a few more shows. We will definitely continue writing. Hopefully, whatever we decide to do as far as recording next, it will be something that is a little bit more of a little bit more streamlined. I think now we kind of have our sea legs a little bit as far as like how we write and how we record and that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping that things will be a little bit faster in the future. A lot of the problems as far as bottlenecking and getting this first EP done rest on me. I have a fairly busy work schedule that takes me out of town a lot. And I also got married this past year. And
Congratulations.
Blah, 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 all that good stuff.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's a good wedding.
Shout out to my wife.
That was.
Shout out to Vari.
Hi, Vari.
Yep.
What else? So I think that we have big stuff in store. I'm already excited for some of the new stuff that we're working on that I think is going to really blow some asses out.
Your rectum is, it will not be where it usually is.
The Floodlands guarantee. Your ass is blown out or your money back.
That is a very interesting selling point.
Oh,
brother.
So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I think probably more than the other guys. Like I'm a studio animal. I love to be in the studio and I love to record and write. And I think these guys also really want to get out and play shows. And so we're going to do that. And hopefully just kick ass and show everybody a good time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to close the show with, Tom?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out. First of all, to my parents, my mom and dad. I love you. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. Thank you for buying my first guitar in 8th grade. You changed my life. And obviously, to all my friends and family out there, you know who you are, and I love you as well. And my coworkers and my bandmates and the bros, my brothers and the bros especially. And if you know you're in my life and I care about you, I love you, and you have contributed to all the good things I get to do with this band. So thank you.
Billy?
I'll let Jimmy go through the list. Mine's going to be shorter. I just want to thank my parents for always supporting me and him and getting us our first instruments. I guess that's it. Everybody in the scene that's always been there for us and all my friends that's always come to my shows.
That works. Nick?
Yeah. Obviously, shout out to my folks. Hi, Mom and Dad. I'm on a podcast.
Yay!
Quick shout out to Brendan Flynn up in Syracuse, a former bandmate of mine, and he's got an awesome project coming out called Diagonal Path. Want to give that a quick plug. It's really, really incredible. So I recommend everybody check that out. thanks to him for being kind of like an artistic soundboard for me and good friend. Want to thank also Phil Price, kind of ditto for him. He's somebody who I get to talk music with all the time and run ideas past, and somebody who's been supportive and a good pal for a long time. Also, my lovely wife, Vari. You're the best. I love you. And thanks for letting me buy 1 million guitar pedals.
Nice. Last but not least, Jimmy.
It's a big list here, but first and foremost, my mom and dad, like Bill said, thank you for the love and support, and thank you for buying our first instruments. Like, look where we are now. But also, Kevin Kober and Michelle Kessler from Subterranea, both great people. Kevin has been like one of my role models for a very long time, and thanks for everything. Also, Bubba from Ithaca Underground, thank you so much for always getting us shows in Ithaca.
Love you, Bubba.
Love you, Bubba. Also, Ayana Della Valle, she is my vocal coach. She's great. Love her. Avenue DIY, Katie Kanazowicz, thank you. Also, let's see here. Phil Fada from the Underground Theater. Thanks for all the great shows. You're awesome, man. Phil Price, another great guy. Thank you, Phil.
Love you, Phil.
Frank Martian, Eric Solo, two great friends. And here's some bands I want to thank. Cold Sweats, my brothers, Brandon, Alex, and Pete. Shout at the Robots, Talk Hard, Unethical, Second Suitor, Maddie Novak and all her bands over the years.
Yes.
Walking Distance, Underground River, Hunter Davidson, you're the man. Amber Martin, you're awesome. Devin Myers, If Madrid, Brighter Days, Hillcrest, the Bro Bros, Tom's band.
I can't shamelessly plug myself, but thank you.
Mark Dickinson of Others, awesome band growing up seeing. Our chemist, Mike Micha and Joby Springsteen, great dudes. Molina, great band. The Egomaniacs, really great cover band with my friend Luke Bernthon. Drama Scream, my friend Steve Huff and my friend Lauren.
Good people.
Great band, great people. Giant Peach, great friends of mine. The Challenged, another great band from Brooklyn, New York. First Jason, can't wait to see them in June or July, I believe they're coming here with Shout at the Robots.
Yeah, that's going to be a really great show.
My friend Steve in Oak Hill and Pine, and Phil Price's old band Batista. You guys are great. And my bandmates, last but not least, thank you for everything. Appreciate it. And thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
No, thank you guys for coming on the show. I mean, this has been long anticipated. And like I said, you guys have always been very gracious about letting Crimson Brethren music on the show. It definitely adds a part to the podcast. I'm hoping to get some Floodlands music on here as well.
Thanks for playing it.
Hi, Miriam. We have one last thing to say. Hi, Miriam. I love you.
We love you, Miriam.
Yes, we do.
Folks, I can't say enough nice things about Floodlands. If you can't make it to the show February 9th, you can find the information about the show on their Facebook page, Shout at the Robots Facebook page. Just do a search about Floodlands February 9th. You can get all the information for the big show in town if you can make it. If you can't, the Floodlands social media links are on the OchoDuroParlayHour.com music section page, so go check it out. Give some support to the guys. And once again, thank you for coming through to the show. For Tom Dowd, Billy Gazdick, Nick Donatelli, Jimmy Gazdick, I'm your host, Ken M. We're going to close out with some new Floodlands music. You are listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. We'll see you next time.